Natasha. Now, land restitution and reform is still quite a complex process. Beneficiaries often don't know their rights, and if they do, how to reform and develop their land in a sustainable way. Vumelana Advisory Fund is a non-profit organization that helps beneficiaries better understand the process of land reform and development. Joining us in studio now is Vumelana Advisory Chief Executive, Peter Setou, and he's going to give us more insights on how they work as Vumelana. Thank you very much for joining us, Peter. Good morning.
Good morning to you and your listeners.
So maybe let's start off with just, when you talk about reform, what is it that you guys specifically concentrate on?
Well, we really focus on beneficiaries of land reform. Most of our work has been in the restitution space, specifically where communities who actually received their land back as part of the restitution program. Our realization has been that as and when people get their land back, they don't have the requisite skills to actually develop the land. They don't have access to capital, etc. This is where we come in as Vumelana. We assist them through investment mobilization to really create sustainable partnerships between beneficiaries of land reform, that's these communities, and the private sector in the form of investors as it were.
And so you guys have your own fund. I'm not quite sure if you work as financiers yourselves or if you work as a conduit to getting finance.
We actually support, we actually do what we call transaction advisory support. We work through skilled transaction advisors whom we rope in depending on the nature of the project that we actually support. For example, if we are supporting a project in the tourism sector, we would rope in independent transaction advisors. So the role of the advisors would be to actually walk through this path with the community to assist them with the investment mobilization process. So we will bear the cost. We'll actually pay for this transaction advisory cost ourselves as Vumelana. So in a sense, we are de-risking the whole environment in the sense that you've got these investors who do not necessarily know the communities, and you've got the communities on the other hand who do not understand or maybe do not even entrust the investors. So our role is to really make sure that we can get these two parties together so that we can get the land to really work for the beneficiaries of land reform.
What about a specific individual? So for example, in our first hour, we had a bulletin about a farmer who actually needed assistance. He's got the land already, he's got the animals. What he doesn't have is the know-how, right? Saying, look guys, just because I'm not as skilled of a farmer as I'd like to be, I'm finding that, for example, some of my livestock is dying. I'm not maximizing on the profits I could be making on this particular land. Even though he's got a certain hectares and acreage, he's not really maximizing in terms of output that he could be getting from that land. And so if somebody needs help with that, can they approach you guys, or does it have to be community projects only?
Well, we've tended to really focus on community projects. And the rationale for doing that, while we were looking at the impact, i.e. to make sure that we, through our initiatives and our support, we can actually impact on more people, as it were. And however, we do not necessarily say we cannot assist individuals. We've got an elaborate process through which we decide which project to support and which not to support. So naturally, if we are approached, we'll put such a project through our normal screening process to decide whether this is a project that's really worth supporting. But we really focus on projects that can have impact, that can create the biggest impact, particularly on the lives of rural communities.
And then how do you get consensus? Because, to deal with a large group of individuals that I'm sure you've experienced is not very easy, right? You may have a group of 10 people, 5 feel like, okay, we could go in this direction. Another 5 feel like we should go in another direction. And during that mediation process, time is getting lost. You're getting out of season. Because also farming is a very seasonal thing, right? 3 months out of season, you got to wait until next year.
Yeah. As I've said, we work through skilled transaction advisors who would have skills set ranging from financial, deal making, as well as community facilitation. So community facilitation plays a really, really big role. And we also largely depend on the leadership within the community. So it's for that reason that as part of our offerings, we also focus on supporting the communities so that they are in a position to can run their own financial affairs, to make sure that they can have policies and procedures in place, to make sure that they can have, annual general meetings through which they can report back to their membership. Our experience has been that in those communities where you've got transparency, where there's governance, things are a lot more smoother. You actually find it that even your prospective investors are more willing or likely to really get into partnerships with such communities. So we do a lot of support to make sure that communities are capacitated to make key decisions.
Now, once you go beyond operational issues, and you find this, for example, in mining as well, you speak to everybody, right? There's a lot of money circulating, and you find that, okay, maybe the partnership is viable and it's profitable, but the money doesn't really filter down to all the individuals that it should filter down to, right? So a community provides lots of resources in terms of land and natural ability, etc., even labor. But then when it's time to declare profits and dividends, then all of a sudden they get just maybe cents on the rand. How do you ensure that things like that don't happen as the fund that you guys run?
This is really, what you are raising is really goes to the crux of what we are also doing, i.e. to make sure that we assist communities to make sure that they've got policies and procedures in place, to make sure that they've got a shared vision amongst themselves as the community to say, how do we benefit as a community? For example, some of the communities might say, look, we don't want to take cash out, but rather we would like to spend some of our proceeds on developing our land to make sure that we create much needed jobs, to make sure that we can, for example, give bursaries to our youth, etc. So we make sure that there is transparency, there is proper governance. As you've rightly pointed out, the reason mainly why communities end up being on each other's throats is because there's no transparency. So, which is why we've decided to focus on this aspect specifically.
And also, lack of transparency is one thing. Another thing is they actually are impoverished communities, right? So in the past, they haven't had money. And once the money comes in, there's a tendency that people want to cash out as soon as possible. That's how you get people say, look, if you just give me 10,000, for example, I'm out. And you can't blame people because the imminent need is there, I suppose. Whereas farming is a long-term thing. You may want to stay in for 5 years, for example, and make sure you turn the crop around a couple of seasons. And that's when you're really going to see the benefits of your investments. So how do you, in that short period where people are really in dire need of assistance, how do you guys intervene there to make sure that they don't fall for, I guess, the trappings of wanting to withdraw too soon?
Well, that's why we emphasize on getting skilled advisors to really walk through this journey with the community. First and foremost, before you can actually assist the community, we often make mistakes of actually deciding for the community what is it that they want. You've got to first and foremost try and understand, do a needs assessment to understand what their needs are, what their aspirations are, so that you are better able to guide them, so that you are better able to take their aspirations into account in whatever form of support that you are providing to them. But I also need to point out that, there is this overemphasis on agriculture, forgetting that there are lots of projects within the tourism space that we are actually supporting as Vumelana Advisory Fund. So all that I'm saying is, whilst we are focusing on agriculture, we should not lose sight of the fact that there's a lot of land out there which is not necessarily arable, which cannot be used for agricultural purposes. And we should use such land for other purposes, such as tourism. And already we've had a number of projects that we've supported as Vumelana. We've concluded in excess of 20 successful projects as it is as we speak. Of those, about 12 are actually in the tourism sector.
Thank you very much for joining us. It's unfortunately we need to leave it. Peter Setou, Chief Executive of Vumelana Advisory Fund.